Indiana.
Madam President, breaking news. Just a short time ago, the Bureau of Economic Analysis issued their report for the fourth quarter of 2012 in terms of our economy. I'm sorry to say that the report said that we have contracted, not gained, but contracted our economy during this fourth quarter. 0.1% at an annual rate last fall. Here we are, about 3.5 years from a deep recession. And in normal recessions, recovery occurs at a significant rate. And that's what gets people back to work. And that gets our economy moving again. And this is the growth that we need to address our fiscal situation. And yet, after nearly 3.5 years of stumbling along and bumping along in the most tepid recovery since before World War II, we now learn that despite some of the optimism that has been projected lately in terms of things are getting better and things are growing and unemployment's bound to start coming down, we get this distressing report that in the fourth quarter, the quarter where we all go out and buy Christmas presents and spend a lot of money at the end of the year, that fourth quarter contracted, not grew. The average annual rate of growth following recessions is about 4% growth per year. And sometimes it's been 6, 7, and even 8%. The average rate that we have had as a nation over this past, following this previous recession, has been at the 2% level or even a little bit less. And so this is not good news for the American people. This is not good news for all of those who are hoping to get back to work. This is not good news for those who are trying to raise money to pay for their mortgage and keep their house, to provide for their children's education going forward. This is not good news for the American people. And I think it says a lot about our failure here in Congress to do what I think most of us understand that we need to do, and that is get our fiscal house in order. There is a cloud of uncertainty that has settled over the American economy over the last 3.5 years that is destroying the hopes and dreams of young people and middle-aged people and those nearing retirement in terms of their savings, in terms of their ability to pay their bills, in terms of their ability to have a meaningful employment. If we're going to get our fiscal house in order, we need to do some fundamental things. One, we need to summon up the will to address this problem, this challenge, to define it as the number one challenge facing the Congress, and to have the political will to do something about it. And doing something about it means you start with having a budget. It has been 1,372 days since the United States Senate passed a budget. That's nearly 4 years. This is completely irresponsible. To deny the American people the transparency of how we are spending taxpayers' dollars and how we are addressing this fiscal situation that we're in that drives us into more debt and more deficit is totally irresponsible. And as I said, it starts with passing a budget. Every Hoosier family and every business in Indiana knows that you cannot be successful and financially sound without creating a budget on which to operate. Restaurants and coffee shops have budgets. Little League baseball organizations have budgets. Our communities and our states must have a budget in terms of how much we're able to spend. And the reason why a budget is so important is that it forces us to determine how we spend the revenue that we have in a sensible way without having to go and continue to borrow and drive ourselves more deeply into debt. There are a lot of things that we would like to do. Everyone here has their priorities, their interests, education, medical research, more funding for social programs, more defense funding, funding for transportation needs, paving roads and repairing bridges, and on it goes. We all have those priorities. There are things that we would like to do, but we haven't faced up to the fact that we can't do everything we would like to do. We have to do the essential things and prioritize our spending at a time when we don't have the revenue to do everything that we would like. It's no different than a family having financial difficulties and sitting down with a family and say, you know, our annual trip to Disney World just can't happen this year. Dad's paycheck is not bringing in the kind of money that he used to, or we're not in the financial position to be able to do what we would like to do. So therefore, we have to make some changes. We have to make some adjustments. Maybe this year we want to go to Brown County State Park, which, by the way, it's an exceptional park in Indiana and a great place for family vacations. But it is a priority decision, the kind of decision that you have to make when you simply don't have the revenue to do everything that you would like to do. We also have a legal duty, and I think personally a moral duty, to present to the American people a budget plan indicating how we're going to spend their taxpayer dollars. Section 301A of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974 states, and this is the law of the land, on or before April 15th of each year, the Congress shall complete action on a concurrent resolution on the budget for the fiscal year beginning on October 1st of such year. When we passed that law, we didn't say Congress may pass a budget. Congress has the ability to avoid having a budget. The word shall means you shall have a budget. And yet, the failure to bring forth a budget under the leadership of this Senate for 1,372 days, nearly 4 years, has created even more dysfunction in an already dysfunctional Senate. It's helped lead to a broken appropriation process. Last year, we did not pass a single appropriations bill through the Senate, leaving us with what we call continuing resolutions, which essentially funds the federal government on autopilot at previous levels without the type of scrutiny and oversight that would be administered through the regular appropriations process. This is no way to govern a country. We are not fulfilling our duty to the people we represent, and most importantly, it hinders any attempt at real spending reform. Now, the Republican-led House has passed budgets annually and fulfilled their duty. We have failed in fulfilling our duty. They presented their priorities to the public. They've described how they will rein in spending, save programs from collapse, and reform the tax system. They're being heavily criticized because they have a budget out there that tells the American people what they're going to do, and some of it is painful because we don't have the money to do everything we would like to do. People would like to have us be able to come home and promise them everything they ask for. We don't have that luxury. Perhaps we never did, but we did it anyway. But no longer do we have the luxury of being able to even think that. And so, yes, all the criticism goes to the House because they want to cut this or they want to modify that, or the priorities decision is for one thing over another thing. While the majority and the administration just sits back and says, we're not going to put any numbers out. Therefore, you can't criticize us. We'll just go along criticizing the other team. I know that Paul Ryan is again working with Speaker Boehner on a 10-year budget plan to put our country on a path to a balanced budget. They'll be heavily criticized for that. But they're stepping up to their legal responsibilities and stepping up to the moral responsibilities we have to do the job we were elected to do. That's why we're sent here. Now, the Senate is going to have to get the will to make these tough choices that we've been avoiding for years, or the market is going to force us to act. And the more we prolong the challenges we face, the longer we wait to act, the harder it's going to be. If we don't put a Senate budget plan together, if we don't lay out our priorities and create a long-term economic plan to reform our spending habits, we're going to face a debt-induced catastrophe that will make this economic turndown, the one we've experienced a few years ago, look like child's play. The fact is, our failure to seriously grapple with our runaway deficit spending is already having huge detrimental effects on our economy, and I just mentioned one of those. Sooner or later, this body just needs to stand up and get this done, and it starts with a budget. The President has made clear in the past few years that when he proposed his budgets, he's not serious about leading the discussion on the fiscal challenges facing us. Didn't mention it in his inauguration address, and he's publicly stated that we really don't have a spending problem. How he comes to that conclusion defies credulity. Interestingly enough, the administration is by law forced to produce a budget, and that's been brought before this body. And it's interesting, and the lack of seriousness to this is indicated by the fact that not even one member of his own party voted for the president's budget. Madam President, I'm just about ready to finish. I'd ask unanimous consent for 3 more minutes to finish.
Without objection.
Madam President, thank you. Not one Democrat senator voted for the president's budget. His own party doesn't support his budget. So it's hard for us to take that budget seriously. And that is why the United States Senate, under the leadership of the Democrats, need to put forward a serious budget, one that we can debate, one that we can amend, one that we can talk about, one we can share with the American people, one that we can get their opinion as to whether this is an important priority program or one that we can use on the basis to make tough choices and explain why we made those choices. That's why we're here. So, why am I here? I'm urging my colleagues in the majority to act. Let's do our jobs. Let's perform our legal responsibility and duty, and one of the most basic duties in Congress, and create a budget so that we can begin to get our fiscal books in order. It's our generation's duty also to repair our nation's financing and ensure that we're not leaving behind this dangerous debt burden on future generations. This is the time to act. This serious debt threatens our national security and the future of our country. And this is the challenge that both of us, both sides of the aisle, need to face. Strengthening our country and putting us back on a sustainable path will not be easy. It will require some sacrifices. But these are the responsibilities that we have to address these and be honest with the American people. And we must take this first step, and it starts with a budget. Madam President, with that, I yield the floor.